The number one Marmaduke fan show is intended for adults and parents. Although I discuss cartoons and comic books, I often discuss adult themes because I want parents to make informed decisions for their children. Unsupervised children should not watch the number one Marmaduke fan show.
Hey guys, number one Marmaduke fan here. I lost so many takes. I deleted all the unused apps. I deleted all the photos and videos. Will this save my videos? Who knows? But Old Souls by Brian McDonald and art by Les McLean. I think this deserved its own review because it's a really, this is a solid recommend. I'm not like, jumping up and down over the moon like greatest comic of all time about it, but it's really fascinating and I'd say it's worth buying. It's good enough for that. So Brian McDonald, what's kind of interesting about him is he's kind of like a Hollywood bigwig kind of guy, and he works for Belief Agency, which sounds like a faith organization, but I looked it up and it's actually like a branding initiative, which is kind of interesting because there is this weird sort of new movement in marketing that emphasizes narrative and storytelling as kind of the central point to marketing for businesses, right? So I don't know what his faith is, but there were also some like subtle context clues in the book that made me think he is Catholic or of some kind of faith. And he mentions Jean Luen Yang in his thank yous. So it was just like, I was noticing that in the narrative. Seems like it is. So what's actually significant about this is my only criticism of Old Souls is it feels a tiny bit Hollywoody. Like I can imagine the Hollywood screenplay that may have been like the basis of the story aspect of this comic, but the story itself is so fascinating. Like I don't mind that. I get annoyed by stories that are Hollywoody if the story is bad, because then I'm just like predicting exactly what's going to come next. But this is a really fascinating story. So that quibble with that's not even like a criticism, really. It just, I could kind of tell that this was written by someone with Hollywood experience. And he's also like his book Invisible Ink, A Practical Guide to Building Stories That Resonate, is required reading at Pixar Animation Studios. So one of the reasons I actually kind of like manga and anime so much is they tend to buck the Hollywood trend a little bit. They're not as sort of stuck in that Western right, but that's not a criticism of Old Souls. Old Souls is really good. So the fascinating concept of Old Souls is, what if you could kind of like get yourself into a trance or at a seance and reconnect with old lives that were you before you reincarnated? And the main character starts to do this. He's like a normal family guy, and as he starts getting into these seances and reconnecting with his past selves, it clearly becomes like a metaphor for drug addiction or addiction in general. Also kind of maybe a metaphor for summoning the dead, summoning up powers you shouldn't be playing around with. What sets him on his journey is he meets an old homeless guy who says, "I was your Chinese grandmother when we were both killed at Tiananmen Square." Not Tiananmen Square, but killed by the Japanese invasion. So this old homeless guy keeps, speaking in Japanese weirdly. He hates Japanese people almost like with a racist hatred, and this kind of gets in this guy's head a little bit because his daughter keeps talking about her past lives, and it's kind of weird, and so he wants to find the answers, right? So what starts out as kind of like an innocent, I want to find out about myself, I want to find out who I might have been. Well, he starts gradually getting deeper and deeper into almost like this cultic world. I like how the villain is a little bit of a crossover between the Penguin and the Kingpin. I just kind of like it from a character design aspect. There's a little nudity, so I'll try to skip over that. There's a little nudity, but one of the other aspects I like of this is as he rediscovers his past lives, he discovers that one of his past lives he was a slave owner. And you can see the cross beams here, sort of metaphorically evoking the idea of a Christian cross. I like that Eastern reincarnation is the central plot point, but it's kind of vague. You're never 100% sure if he's really experiencing past lives, or if maybe this is sort of some kind of psychically induced trance that the cult is putting him through. But there is, in addition, there is this really interesting Christian undercurrent to the whole narrative that never like I don't know, it never like whacks you over your head and says, hey, this is a Christian book. But I do think it adds an interesting counterpoint that we have like this Eastern reincarnation idea and this sort of Christian idea throughout it of redemption. This is my favorite thing about the book, is that there's actually a redemption arc in this story. It's so unusual to see a redemption arc about racists or about slave owners. I think we need stories like that. There's this weird thing where people don't like doing redemption arcs for racists, because that means that a racist can stop being a racist and be forgiven. And we don't want to tell stories about that, but this is actually has a really beautiful redemption story. I also think it kind of vaguely evokes King David, like, and this isn't mentioned. This isn't mentioned explicitly, but like the slave owner kind of like lies on his son's grave, flat face, like David did when he was mourning his son, and then someone has to kind of come along and tell him, hey David, you need to be the king of Israel. You don't have time for this. One of the slaves comes along, counsels him, take my place to say, and you can beat me if you got a mind to, but you still living. This ain't your grave. Your boy with Jesus now. Leave him be. Can't no good come of this. Leave him be. And then the great irony of that is the slave owner, it seems, was able to move on with his life and find redemption, but the normal man in the modern society, he's still stuck and he can't get out. So I was really fascinated by it. I really can't talk about it in much more detail without kind of spoil. The whole point of it is it's a very unique and interesting idea, and you should kind of experience it. So go check it out. And I like Les McLean's kind of nice, clean, cartoony style. All right, so again, I'm kind of waiting to do more in-depth reviews of again because it's so good that I kind of want to see if she sticks the landing. Because if she sticks the landing, this is going to be the greatest comic of all time, pretty much. I've sung its praises to the moon and back. So I've read like 2 volumes in one day because it's so good. Like, even if I have like a quibble, it's like she addresses that quibble in the story. So one of my quibbles was, it seems like she introduces a lot of extra subplots and narrative elements, and I'm wondering, okay, are you going anywhere with this? And then she'll say, okay, don't worry. Now we're going to get back to that narrative subplot. Don't worry, I didn't forget about it. So Aki, who's kind of like, for the past few volumes, she's just kind of been there. Like she went back in time too, but is anything going to come of that? Well, now we come back and the beautiful themes get reinforced. Aki was kind of defined by her boyfriend relationship. She kind of worshipped her boyfriend, and she finds out that her boyfriend's a big dick. And now what's she gonna do? It kind of sets her whole world upside down. It's this really great comedic scene where she kind of turns into like a crazy heartbreak monster for a while and just wants to date some man, any man, to fill the hole in her heart. So what the neat thing about it is, even as I'm wondering, are we going anywhere with this? Are we going to stick the landing? Kubo always comes back and weaves everything together masterfully. So even before I have a chance to object, she gets to it. And in volume 11, we're actually progressing towards something. We're not just going to float around in like a comedic, what's the word for it? Status quo forever. She's getting close to wrapping the story up because the year is going to end, and then Captain Usami is going to graduate, and a lot of the other older Owendan members are going to graduate. So can Imamura, the kind of testy, hypersensitive quitter, man up enough to where he's ready to take Captain Usami's place as captain of the Owendan? Jumping ahead, I also kind of like the theme that when she introduces a new character, they fit with the theme. So Usami invites a couple of the older Owendan captains along to kind of test out Imamura and see if he's ready to fill that role. And Summer Hiko is a dick. But he's a sunny, always positive sort of dick who's always just really nasty, but with a sweet smile on his face. But the point of it is, as he's being a dick, he's actually kind of forcing you to toughen up and be patient and respect the kind of band of brothers code of virtue of the Owendan, while still being a dick. But in spite of these negative traits, all of these guys are either idiots, assholes, or sexual degenerates. And yet, the kind of bigger point being made is that a lot of these teenagers also have these excellent qualities that are just beginning to emerge into adulthood. It's so funny. Every page I'm laughing my head off. Every page I'm taking photos and posting it on Twitter because they're so funny out of context. The other neat thing she really does, let's see if I can find it, actually, is she does a good job of emphasizing the big moments when you need some visual emphasis, and maybe not necessarily emphasizing it and kind of letting things be small later. It's like there's one moment where he's in a rabbit suit, and the whole point is that Imamura is easily embarrassed, and now he's in a giant bunny suit to try to make himself a better cheerleader. So as Hirohiko, the guy who's been an asshole this time, as he's getting demeaned and picked on by his older Owen Don members, Imamura puts on the rabbit hat and says a good word for the guy who's been a jerk for him the whole time. And the drawing style changes to this really detailed, shiny drawing style to emphasize kind of like the coolness of this moment. And then it'll be back to like a regular style for the little things. So masterclass in art. I love the presentation. I just love it. I even love how they do the setup for the next volume, where they do this cool like typography, graphic design thing everywhere, and they really get the tone of the comedy isn't just, oh, it's stupid, or haha, it's just like a comedy duo on TV, right? It kind of annoys me when something falls too neatly into the classic, straight man, tall, skinny guy, short, fat guy archetype. Unless you're like Stan and Laurel, then you can do that. But the comedy of this isn't really like, oh, they're just like people on TV. The comedy of this is, oh, they're just like stupid kids with all of their emotional problems, and they like the girls, they worship their boyfriends, and then they get their hearts broken. They don't know what to do, and so we crank everything up to 11, and you just can't wait to see what the explosion of energy at the end is. So again, potential contender for greatest comic of all time, Old Souls. Wonderful comic, really fascinating concept, and a beautiful redemption story. So, man, I'm reading so many good books this week. All right, I did it. I didn't lose the take. I'm #1 Marmaduke fan. I love you guys. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you later.